I don't usually talk about this night. Not because I've forgotten, but because every time I relive it even in my mind I get that same knot in my gut. It happened years ago while I was stationed at an Air Force base in Louisiana. I won't name the installation, but if you've ever served there, you'll probably know which one I'm talking about. The place had its share of whispered legends. People talked about a shadowy figure in a top hat who roamed a dirt road near the storage compound. Others spoke of a deranged man struck by a patrol car, vanishing into the woods. But the one that always got under my skin was the story of the little girl. According to base lore, decades ago, long before my time, young girl was visiting her father during the construction of a large storage area. She had been playing on the steel structures when she lost her footing and fell from a high ledge. The accident was fatal. Since then, some say her presence never left. The first time I heard the tale was during my second night shift. I was partnered with a seasoned airman who knew the base like the back of his hand. He told me the story as we cruised through the compound, then casually stopped the vehicle in front of the structure where it supposedly happened. He cut the engine and the music, letting silence settle between us like a heavy fog. I remember the eerie stillness and the way he kept looking around, like he was expecting something. Nothing happened that night, but it left me with a feeling I couldn't shake. Fast forward 3 years. I was scheduled to work in that same area again. By then, the place had mostly been shut down, only a few sectors needed patrol. It was a slow, grim night. Our usual patrol car was in maintenance, so the command stuck us with a damn cattle truck. It was loud, clunky, and awkward, but it got us through the gates. We were assigned to check the compound 3 times. The first 2 passes were uneventful, but around 4 a.m., we went in for the last sweep. The maintenance crew had already gone home, so it was just us out there, 2 airmen and miles of rusting structures. I was riding shotgun, scanning locks with a flashlight while my partner drove. We were just chatting casually as we turned onto a road known among us as Echo Street, the same street from that old story. That's when I started to feel off. At first, I couldn't put my finger on it. The air seemed heavier. Then, almost without realizing it, we both stopped talking. The usual sounds of the truck's engine and the radio started to feel distant, muffled, like they were being smothered. A chill crept up my spine. And then I heard it. A low, strained groan, like someone exhaling their last breath under duress. It sounded unnatural, almost inhuman. I whipped my head toward the driver and snapped, "Dude, knock it off." But he just looked at me, puzzled. "I'm just driving. You okay?" I went quiet, raising my hand for him to wait. Then it came again, closer this time. That same guttural, sorrowful sound. I reached for the radio and turned it off. Silence fell. I leaned toward him and whispered, "Do you hear that?" He stopped the truck. We listened. Nothing. And then, like a nightmare reborn, it returned. This time, louder. Closer. It was the sound of a woman in torment, like someone gasping for air, their throat constricted. It reverberated in the cab, like it was crawling across the seat between us. "What the hell is that?" he muttered, panic tightening his voice. Neither of us moved. We just sat there listening, hoping it was our imagination. But it wasn't. It came again, stronger this time, from outside and inside the truck simultaneously, like we were surrounded. That was all it took. Without a word, my partner slammed the truck into drive and tore down the road. The tires screamed around the curve, and the metal gates rattled in the truck bed as we sped toward the exit. We didn't speak. We didn't breathe. We just wanted out. When we reached the main gate, I jumped out to unlock it, hands trembling. He covered me with a flashlight, eyes darting around. As soon as the gate swung open, he floored it through. I followed, slammed it shut behind us, and leapt back in. Back at base, we went straight to our flight chief. We thought he'd laugh it off, chalk it up to exhaustion. But when we finished telling him, he looked us both dead in the eye and said, "I believe you. Something similar happened to me, twice. Once in that same compound. Once right behind this building." His words hit like a brick. We weren't hallucinating. We weren't alone in that experience. I went back to that sector only once after that. Never at night. And I've never driven down Echo Street again. Whatever's out there, it's still waiting. I haven't shared this with many people, just my wife and a couple of close friends. Not because I'm ashamed, but because I still don't fully understand what happened. It took place during my time in the Army, when I was barely out of high school, green, naive, and completely unprepared for the reality of the Vietnam War. I was a radio operator, trained to keep communication open between units. My first night in country, the air felt like soup, thick, hot, and foul, with the stench of rotting vegetation clinging to everything. The roads were slick with mud from a recent storm. I remember the bus ride to our barracks, how the wheels seemed to grind through the muck like we were entering a place we weren't meant to leave. That first night was uneventful, but I felt something wrong in the air. The drill sergeants tried to spook us with stories during basic, but now the jungle was real. The moon floated behind passing clouds like a shy ghost watching over our shoulders. The silence out here wasn't peace, it was pressure, like the jungle was holding its breath. My job was simple, at least on paper. Carry the radio, keep everyone connected. That box was my lifeline and my burden. After a few days, I was transferred into a unit that had just lost their last operator to a mine. Yeah, I was the replacement. Their silence when I joined told me everything I needed to know about how he died. The first time we were ambushed, I couldn't see a thing, just muzzle flashes in the green blur of the jungle. It was deafening, pure chaos. We returned fire blindly, ducking behind trees and crawling through muck. When it was over, we advanced. That's when I saw the 3 enemy soldiers, lying twisted and broken in the dirt, still warm. Just boys like us. Their eyes were still open. And that was just the beginning. A few weeks later, I was pulled aside by my NCO. Someone wanted to speak with me. A tall man in his 50s stood waiting. He wasn't like the others. Too calm. Too clean. His uniform had no grime, no wear. He introduced himself as Officer R.C.K. Douglas. Said he was intelligent. My CO didn't say a word, just stood there with his jaw tight, like Douglas owned the place. I was ordered to transfer to his unit as his new RTO. I didn't want to leave my guys, but in the Army, your orders are gospel. So I boarded a Huey with Douglas and flew out. We landed in a thick jungle, far from any established outpost. Hidden among the trees were old enemy huts, partially destroyed. It looked like a battle had torn through, but what was strange was the atmosphere. The soldiers stationed there didn't behave like any I'd seen. Some wore gas masks. Others just stood there, unmoving like statues. None of them spoke. None acknowledged my presence. When I tried to greet them, they stared at me with blank, lifeless expressions like they weren't even all there. I felt something crawling beneath my skin. Douglas led me into one of the smaller huts and told me to stay put. Said someone would come for me soon. I waited, but unease gnawed at me. Something about the place felt wrong. I couldn't sit still. So, against better judgment, I left the hut and crept toward the large central tent. The flaps were half open, and curiosity got the better of me. I peeked inside. What I saw still makes me feel sick. 6 large glass containers sat in a row on a makeshift table. Each one held a severed head. Enemy combatants. Tubes and wires ran from the heads, feeding some kind of glowing green liquid through their skulls. But the worst part? Their mouths twitched. Eyes blinked. It was as if they were still aware. I couldn't move. Couldn't breathe. A hand gripped my shoulder hard. I turned Douglas. His expression was cold and furious. I mumbled something like, "What is this?" But he cut me off sharply and ordered me back to my quarters. The next thing I remember is waking up in a triage tent. My ribs were shattered. Collarbone cracked. They told me I'd been found unconscious near a blast zone, but I didn't remember an explosion. No memory of an attack. Nothing. Just black. Douglas? Gone. The men in that strange outpost? Gone. No records. No follow-ups. My superiors acted like the transfer never happened. Like Douglas never existed. But I know what I saw. I know what I heard. I don't know if they were experimenting, interrogating, or trying to bring the dead back to life. But whatever it wasn't human. I still hear those soft, twitching gasps sometimes, just as I'm about to fall asleep. And I'll never forget that green glow. I don't share this story often, not because I'm afraid you won't believe me, but because part of me wishes I didn't believe it myself. It started during the dead of night. Our squad's armored vehicle rumbled off the gravel path, pushing through a wall of undergrowth. The fog was unnaturally thick and the air clung to us like sweat. Somewhere deep in the jungle, a unit known only as Bravo had gone dark. For weeks, nothing. No radio traffic. No survivors. Then, without warning, a message came through. Not a call for help but a string of numbers, repeating like a broken record. Over and over. 58247 5824. I remember gripping the comms, my voice low and tense. "Sergeant, are you sure this is the location?" "That's what HQ confirmed," Davis answered, eyes scanning the mist. "Lock and load." The vehicle came to a crawl and stopped. The jungle swallowed all sound. We disembarked, boots crunching on broken stone and glass as we approached what was left of the base. A few weeks ago, this place had been alive with movement, military chatter, machinery, radio bursts. Now nothing. The buildings stood like forgotten tombstones, doors creaking in the wind, windows shattered. Something bad had happened here. "Eyes up," Davis whispered. Inside, chaos was frozen in time. Blood-smeared walls. Overturned furniture. Discarded gear. Something had torn through this place like a storm and left everything mid-collapse. And through it all, we could still hear the numbers, crackling over the abandoned comm systems. Repeating. Closer we got to the command center, the louder they became. That voice robotic, lifeless, chanting a code that felt like it was digging into my brain. We pushed into the main building. Consoles blinked faintly in the dark. The air was stale. Corporal Lee leaned in, whispering, "What's the meaning of that code?" No one answered. We kept going. No signs of life. No survivors. And then we reached the lab. The door was hanging from one hinge. Inside, a pungent mix of rot and chemicals hit us in the face. Equipment lay shattered on the ground. Notes were scattered like leaves in the wind. And then the bodies. What remained of the Bravo unit was lying sprawled across the floor, faces twisted in expressions of pure terror. No wounds. No burns. Just the look of men who had died seeing something they never should have. Lee pointed to the far side of the room. There, half buried under ruined notes and vials, was a man slumped against the wall. Commander Haskins. Clutched in his stiff hand was a pad. Scribbled across it, 58247. And beneath the numbers, a single sentence. "They're coming for us." The weight of those words dropped on us like lead. Who was coming? What had they seen? The realization was sinking in fast that we weren't here to save anyone. We had walked into a trap. The silence. The fog. The repeating numbers weren't a call for help. It was a warning. Suddenly, everything shifted. The stillness of the base now felt like a predator watching us. We turned to leave, but the fog had grown thicker, alive with whispers we couldn't understand. Then we saw it. A shadow moved between the trees. Humanoid. Slow. Watching. My body froze as an icy dread curled around my spine. Whatever it was not human. "Move!" Davis shouted, breaking the spell. We ran. Stumbling, slipping, driven by pure instinct. The numbers still echoed through the air, through the trees, through my mind. We reached the vehicle, breath ragged, clothes soaked in sweat. Just as the engine turned over, a figure emerged from the mist behind us. Cloaked in darkness. No eyes. No face. Lee screamed into the radio. "This is Alpha. We need immediate evac from Bravo's site. Repeat, immediate evac." Static. Then again the numbers. 58247. We didn't stop to think. Just drove. The base disappeared into the mist behind us, swallowed by the fog like it had never been there at all. Davis finally spoke, voice low. "We can't leave this alone. We need to find out what that code meant. What happened here?" I wanted answers too. We owed them that much. To the men we found and the ones we didn't. As the sun began to rise, casting a faint glow on the jungle floor, I felt it. That was only the beginning. And even nowadays, months, years later, I still hear those numbers sometimes. In my sleep. In the radio static. That was another true story. If you're still watching, you're one of the brave ones. Most don't make it this far. Subscribe to Horror Stories and hit the bell because the next horror stories drop soon. Stay scared. Stay safe. We'll see you in the dark.